Great. Welcome to First Fridays at 5 with the Instructional Designer and Learning SIG. And we will be talking today about freelancing as an instructional designer and technical communicator. What it is to be freelancing and what motivates you to go that way. Okay, so
Oops.
first we're gonna do some exciting things that are happening with the IDLC and STC. As you may know, we STC new member meetups are going to start happening again on next Monday at 12 Eastern time, 12 noon. So, and that is free, and you can go to the STC website and you will get the link there 15 minutes before it starts. Also, the summit is happening in Atlanta, Georgia, on May 13th to the 17th, and I'm pretty sure most of you will be going and participating in all the activities. So enjoy summit and learn more all the things that are going to be happening there. The leadership team meeting will happen on June 24th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And then our next First Friday at 5 will happen on June 2nd from 5 to 6 p.m. And if you have not joined STC, you can join by going to stc.org membership. There we go. What is freelancing? So freelancing is basically where you work for yourself. And in the United States, there has been a 69% of growth in independent workers over the last 2 years, according to MBO partners. Right now, in 2022, the total number of independent workers in millions was 64.6. So that gives you an idea of the amount of work of people doing freelancing work. And the motivations that are behind are mostly freedom, be able to enjoy time, to have their own space, to be nomads or mobile workers, as we were talking before. So it all depends on what our personal motivation will lead us to do this kind of work. But we're not alone. And that includes fully independent workers, those that are just part-time, and those that are occasional independents. And those are those occasional freelancers are the ones that have the bulk in numbers, which are 32 million of people that have that side hustle going on. So let me ask you, if you have experience doing freelancing, and what has been your motivation? Why would you are inclined to do this kind of work?
I did freelancing. This is Sue. I did freelancing back in 2009. That was my only source of income. The reason I did it was the economy was bad. That was right when the housing market crashed in 2008, and technical writers were being like go left and right. Um, I didn't have a positive experience. I ended up almost in bankruptcy. Um, and having a few lean years trying to find work. My biggest problem was getting paid and having consistency in when I did get paid, having it be consistent.
Yes. Yes. Um, we will talk about that in a little bit, but around 20% of all the independent workers um, earn more than 100,000 annually. So there is a space to grow in earnings based on that. But the reason behind of why people do freelancing is because they want to have the freedom for traveling. So um, it 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 opens up this the experience and background depending on what are you your area is, um, how often and how available that work is for you to do freelance work. I know that after COVID, uh, remote work has become more accessible to people. And I think that was the jump on this growth because from 2019 to 2020, it grew 131%. So if you see, those are the years where COVID hit, and this remote work has been um, um, more acceptable by corporations and um, even small businesses are not requiring all their employees to be present at work, at their place of work. So it also depends in certain areas and fields where you can do this kind of work in as an instructional designer, technical communicator, um, editor, and all of that. You are able to do this kind of work and find. Um, so how good it, or how do you validate your knowledge in this kind of work, and how do you compete with other people when you're applying for this job, this kind of jobs? So a way to do it is to have a portfolio or a website where you can show authority and have it updated with samples of your works and 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 it doesn't have to be real life cases of what you have worked, but you can do um, um, some examples of how you could approach a problem and present that with a solution, and then you can showcase that in your portfolio and provide explanations on how you got to that point. And so there's also in here, if you're treating freelancing as a full-time work for you, or you're doing it as a side hustle, or just whenever you find work, you will take it. Because all of those three instances will require different efforts on your part to showcase your work on website and all of that. For example, if you're doing it full time, you are a contractor, so you will be or a what it's called sole proprietor regarding taxes and all that stuff, and you want to have that all the legal stuff seen, so you in taken care of, so you don't neglect that part of freelancing, because it's important to you take all. And for example, I don't know, Sue, if you establish contracts with the people you work and then they didn't pay, because if you sign contract, that's a binding things, and if it was just word, that will be a problem. But if it was something signed, that give you a more what's it called, established, like a business type transaction. And so now how do we find this work, these projects? We first, one of the main things is networking, because you start getting this relation with the people in your field. So you are getting noticed. You become friends. You can show exchange of ideas, and one way to do that is through, for example, professional associations like STC, doing it through LinkedIn, guilds, local clubs, and also conference and webinars. This way you can talk to other minded people who will share with you not only their knowledge, but if they know something that is going on, or if you can help in a project, or if your expertise on something specific might be useful for them. And besides networking, you can also use job boards like STC, LinkedIn, Indeed, and personal recommendations. Now, here, how much to charge? Because the problem in here is not to oversell yourself, it's to undersell yourself. You don't want to do work and then come out when it all is said and done, that what you got paid, it is not enough for all the work you put in. So how do you find that formula into and consider all things, so you can make a adjusted pricing where you can feel comfortable? It will depend on the work that you are being proposed and that you are going to propose to your clients. And you can do you can compare that work with how much a salaried person gets paid. You can use the STC salary database.
Okay, I'm sorry about that, technical difficulties, but what said in this slide was that the bottom line is how much to charge will depend on the work that you're doing, and the other consideration, taxes, and basically also how much the kind of work that you will be doing, and so for you to have a baseline on that, you can use how much are people getting paid for do that same job as a salaried, or you can look in salary databases like STC, so you can have an idea and it's establish how much, but the point is not to undersell your work, because sometimes when you're trying to, especially at the beginning, you will try to not charge that much so you can get jobs, but then you will have a hard time not when to raise those prices. So it will be good so you have a base point to look into salary databases, so you are within the standard of the field, even if it's freelancing, which people think it's cheaper to pay a freelancer than hire someone permanent, but that is a misconception that can be demeaning for freelancers or contractors in that other names, or independent workers. And so in here, how to be successful and how to measure your success, it is tied to the motivation behind why you started. If you wanted to have more time with your family, or you wanted to travel more, are you doing that? Are you spending more free time with your family? Are you traveling more? If you wanted to work in a specific projects, are you getting those kind of projects that you wanted, or not? So that will give you a gauge of the successful of your, it could be a side hustle, it could be just a part-time or a full-time independent work. Now, let's talk about resources. There are books, website, blogs, podcasts, courses. As an independent worker, you will need to be on top of what is happening in your field. So you will have to constantly be learning things. But here's the trick. Don't just become a professional learner where you learn and learn, but you don't put in practice what you learn. What you will need is to learn things, and then you go and put what you have learned and practice it and add it to your website so you can showcase that new skill that you have learned. Also, it doesn't have to be learning within that same field, because if you're a freelancer, that means that you wear many hats. So you will need to know about finances so you can have a successful business. You will need to know a little bit of marketing so you can market yourself and bring more projects you will need to, like I said, stay on top of what's going on in your field, so you can become an authority and people know you, that you know your stuff, so they can, oh, I know this lady or this guy has a blog, and he always posts, or she always posts interesting things, and they can come to you to learn. And so that way people are getting to know you, and when a company needs a special project, maybe one of their decision makers know you and say, oh, maybe this person can help us. And so and for example, I know that I have 3 books that I've been reading, and I found interesting about business, because if you're doing this as a full-time independent worker, as I said, you need to treat it like a business. So for example, that E-Myth Revisited on why most small businesses don't work and what to do about it, by Michael Gerber. It's a good book. Or The Side Hustle, From Idea to Income in 27 Days, by Chris Kylbo, and The 4-Hour Work Week by Timothy Ferriss are 3 good books to start, and to have that mindset of business-like, if this is what you're thinking about to do as a full-time work and not just a side hustle. But you can start like that, and that could be a good way to dip your toes in what freelancing is, if you like it, and continue to move forward until you are a complete independent worker. I don't know if any of you can share your experiences.
I have my own business. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of marketing, which I think is something that a lot of us as introverts, most of us in tech comm are introverts, except maybe some of you instructional designers, you seem to like to get out there with people a little bit more than we do. But I'm mostly a technical editor and a medical editor, and I'm just marketing all the time. But right now I actually have a full-time job, and I'm just doing it as a side hustle, and it's still a lot of work to keep it going. I'd say that LinkedIn is my biggest, marketing thing. Like, that's where I stay active, whether I have a job or whether I'm doing it full time. I was full time freelancing for about 3 years, and when I took on this job that I have right now only because I needed a new anchor client, which I don't know if you've heard this term before, but it's basically someone who gives you consistent work on a regular basis that you can count on to give you some consistent income. And then you have a lot of other little clients that, you kind of fill in the gaps with. I needed a new anchor client. They were kind of driving me crazy, treating me more like an employee, which is definitely a problem. I had a lot of meetings and things. And so when I was looking for a new anchor client, it was kind of looking for part-time, or, had my eye on full-time, and then this full-time job came up, and it's remote, and, working from home gives you a lot of flexibility with, fitting in little side hustle things, calls and things. So I kind of got the best of both worlds, but I'm a little tired sometimes. So
So how much of your time, Kelly, is spent actually seeking work?
Well, at this point, I'm not actively looking for work, but I'm
Okay.
always trying to be visible.
Okay.
So I have on LinkedIn, I post every week. I have an email list. It's basically the same posts that go out to LinkedIn. I'm speaking at conferences. I'm speaking at Summit. I speak at I give a lot of webinars and things. So for me, it's more of a keeping top of mind with people at this point.
Okay.
Exactly.
But even LinkedIn, I still have job alerts just to see what's out there and what's going on. And I love now that they're starting to tell you what salaries are and stuff, because
Yeah.
I'm kind of looking at like, okay, so I'm doing good here. Like you just, like always trying to gauge your worth in the job market, whether it's a freelancer as an employee.
So you're in the New England area, which is one of the higher cost of living.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, you're not.
I used to be in New York. We're in Georgia now.
Oh, you guys moved. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, long story.
All right. So the cost of living is lower in Georgia, I'm assuming, than in the Northeast.
Yeah, but I still charge the same. That doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Because I was wondering if remote work, because work at work is often geographical. Even our salary database, our STC salary database, is adjusted for geographic and markets and things like that.
Yeah.
I just
The
wondered
company I work for is in Philly though, so maybe that's why they didn't. When I asked for a certain salary, they didn't say anything about it.
live in Georgia for work for a company, in Philly or Silicon Valley or someplace where it's a high cost of living. So
yeah, but it's always good to know what you're worth as an employee or because freelance, I mean, you should be double what you're making hourly as an employee.
because nobody covers your overhead.
Taxes, overhead, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Not always. I mean, you can be a freelancer and still work with a number of recruiters who will cover that overhead for you if you've got enough hours with them per year. I see that a lot.
Contractor.
Yeah, you're a contractor, and there is some value in that, especially if you're first getting started and you're having a hard time getting traction. Working with recruiters for their clients is a great way to get your foot in the door and sort of figure out what's what. There are downsides though, right? Because you're not really working for them, you're working for the client, but it's also a great way to sort of find your footing, right? Get started, start asking questions and figuring out, okay, what's sustainable for me, and moving on from there. So if you're with them for so many hours, they will usually offer you some kind of internal benefits. And if you work for them, usually you have the option of being a W-2 where they take care of all the taxes, or you can be a 1099 or S Corp, whichever. And so you do have some flexibility with that. And then later on, you can change your model, right?
But to me, that's different. Contracting to me is different than freelancing.
It is.
And that's fine. I've done both. I've done all of them.
Oh, so have I. And there are times where, like right now, I am both. I'm doing a short-term, small, like 10 hours a week for one client through a recruiter. And I'm doing actually 3 different projects for 3 different clients on my own as a freelancer. So it's like, you kind of are going to find yourself at various times because of market conditions and whatever else is going on, going back and forth. The flexibility to do that though is what it's really all about. So,
and I love all the not just the flexibility, but the different types of projects I get when I do that, when I'm able to have all different kinds of clients doing all different things. And it's always making me more marketable.
Yes. And the other nice thing about it is a lot of the recruiters have learned that they have to start providing some sort of I wouldn't call it training, I'd call it professional development opportunities, which then exposes you to even more of their internal consultants and their external consultants. And then you start building that network that grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. And that feeds into how you use LinkedIn, and it feeds into how you hear about new projects and new companies and things that are moving in the marketplace and whatnot, because you're growing that network, and that network becomes your safety net ultimately, if you do it long enough.
Totally agree. Totally agree with all that.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Keeping in touch with everybody that you work with,
yes.
You have good relationships with keep in touch with all of them. And LinkedIn is a big.
Yes. And, keeping your skills sharp is important, but so is constantly keeping in contact with those clients that you've done work for in the past that you enjoyed working with, and saying, hey, how's it going?
Not the ones you didn't pay who didn't pay you.
No, those people you ignore and you don't help in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
I
haven't
lost
had that
20
problem,
grand to a
but,
client who decided to stiff me on the bills. So, ex-client.
Stop all work immediately.
So I wondered is that something that you guys discuss in your networking? Is who is good pay and who is not good pay?
Yes, I do. When I get asked, I'm like, yeah, sure, here's the information.
Yeah, I'm pretty open with things. I haven't had those conversations, but I haven't had a problem with getting paid.
I did once, and there were
Do
no
you
red
sign
flags
contract?
going into it. There were no red flags the first half of the project, and then all of a sudden it was like they fell apart. And it's
That
like, all right,
happens.
never doing that again.
It's hard to. I feel like some types of work lend themselves to that more than others. Like sometimes I'm working. A lot of times my clients are pharma.
Yeah.
They're big money. They got, I don't have to worry about asking them for the higher rate and then paying. They're going to pay.
Right.
I think sometimes when you get a small business, or I feel like the fiction editors talk about this a lot. Like I'm in the Editorial Freelancers Association. I feel like they talk about it a lot. They've got independent authors and they don't pay. It's like a whole different thing. But,
and the margins are small too.
yeah.
The other downside, and I actually started doing this, that was the only time that I have ever signed a contract that had a net 60 payment scheme. I will never do less than 30 again, ever. Because 60 days of work before you get paid is a long, long, long time.
That's a very big pipeline.
That's how the amount was able to accrue to that much. And it's like, nope, okay, did it once, never doing it again.
I just had a client, I had 15 in my contract, and they said, I think we're closer to 30. And they're a big company. I'm like, that's fine. I know you're going to pay me.
Right.
So I changed it to 30 in the contract, but it was like, It was funny that they were worried about it, but that's good. You want them to be worried about it. That means they're going to get you paid.
Exactly. And like I said, this was something where halfway through everything was great. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. And what had happened behind the scenes, just to kind of give you guys an idea of what happened, it wasn't that they suddenly decided, oh, we hate our work, we're not paying her. They got bought out by a venture market group that basically comes in, guts the place, and then sells it off for parts to get their money back. And if there's anything left that they can then resell, they do. Well, the problem is I did not know that, and nobody told me. So I'm cooking along, doing my thing, thinking everything's great. And all of a sudden I'm like, payday. And they're like, yeah, so we basically, the whole group you were working with, they were just let go yesterday or like the week before, and nobody told me. So I'm sitting there just doing my thing, and never got a bounce back on the emails. That was the thing that really, really bothered me. So I got no notice, and they were like, yeah, we don't need your services. And so we canceled the contract. Were you going to tell me? Everything about it was like screech halt. And collecting on that, good luck, because you sign the contract with the old company, we're the new company. I'm
right.
Like, for real? Yeah, I did contact my attorney, and he's like, yeah, you're not gonna. I'm like, okay, fine. Moving on. But yeah, you want to make sure that you've got those lines of communication open, and you're always talking to not just who you're working for, but saying, hey, so what's going on in your world? Anything new in the company? Basically, you have to be nosy, is what I'm saying.
Well, I'm also hearing networking again is so important, because if you trust the people that give you the lead, if you have a level of trust with them, this is going to be less likely to happen. But, just getting out there and getting your, like Edel said, getting your toes, dip in your toes, you take all kinds of risks because you just want to get in and worry about the risks when you become more stable. So, but networking is what I'm hearing, and LinkedIn and
Trust.
conferences and all that.
Getting people who talk you up to other people,
Always
it's a
good.
big. That's why people bring you on.
And what Kelly said about getting noticed and always being on top of the people's mind. So her strategy of doing LinkedIn and posting, and that is a good way to, she's always posting something or sending something through email, and that constancy is what people recognize. And
just being helpful to people. I've found sometimes that people ask you these questions and they think that you're just so busy. How could you possibly help me? But could you, and they ask you this question, and you're like, yeah, it's fine, it's no problem. And then later on, I ended up working with someone, brought me into a project. She was asking me the question. She was, because she was less, experienced. She didn't know some things. And so I helped her out with some things. And then she brought me onto, a couple of projects. And so you just don't know what's going to happen. So there's a lot of that serendipity too of, you don't know who's going to turn into a client or know somebody who could turn into a client. And then also just, with the LinkedIn posts and everything else, just being helpful and just helping other people. And, I don't worry about the time that I spend, speaking, at conferences and just talking to people on LinkedIn. People send me random questions. It's fine.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And one thing I always tell people is, especially when you're first getting started, you have got to put on your calendar a couple hours every week for admin stuff, pure admin stuff, whether that's calling and talking to your contacts, your colleagues, reaching out on LinkedIn or whatever social media you use, or trolling to see what's out on LinkedIn, even to see what you can respond to, because the more you respond to something on LinkedIn, the higher value the algorithm sees you as being. And so you start getting picked up more, and people see you more, and they respond more. And you're not only are you building your network, you're also being looked at more. The weeks that I engage more on LinkedIn, how when you first log in, it tells you how many people looked at your profile this week. Mm-hmm. I can post something twice in a week and I'll get like 60 people who checked out my profile. If I post 5 times a week, it's like 300. It's insane how much that number goes up. Right. And it's like, all I have to do is share a post or make a comment on somebody else's post or whatever. And it's like, wow. So the algorithm is really that touchy, if you will. But that's still okay, right? That's still okay.
And I like what you're saying about the admin. One thing that I like to do to make it fun for myself is I have Financial Friday. I have a little checklist for myself of things I like to do. And it's basically, checking in where are all my invoices, who is it time to invoice people, is everybody paid? And then I had, when I was actively looking for work, I had Marketing Monday, and I would kind of have a little checklist for myself of like, okay, have I checked in with so many people? Have I, sent emails to people? Have I posted on LinkedIn? Have I checked certain job lists to see if there's anything out there? Mm-hmm. Just trying to make it fun and kind of give myself like a structured way to make sure that I at least do something for those admin things, even if I'm really busy with work.
And it might be, and keep a list of things that you do on a regular basis. So for example, every month I have go out and look at your website and make sure all the links work, because every once in a while something changes. You know, or update your resume every 3 months, or whatever the frequency is, you know, all those things that you should be keeping on top of. What's the normal cadence for that? It's going to be different for everybody, but make a list so that you don't forget to do it. Because this is embarrassing, but I was asked for my resume last, let's say November. And I'm like, okay, sure, no problem. I go to attach it, and it says January on it. I'm like, oh my God. You know, and it's like, I've done so many things. I'm like, okay, clearly I got to put this on regular rotation, because this is not cool.
Right.
Stuff like that. Admin time.
So Jen, you mentioned your website. Do you guys recommend having a paid website as opposed to like a free blog? Or I also think both of you have branded email addresses.
Yes. So I was lucky. When I first decided to go out on my own in 2010, which was actually the second time I did, I happened to look and the domain was available. Like, great. It was $20. It's like, great, I'm going to get that. And then you get the domain locked so nobody can sneak it out from underneath you, which I think it's like 30 these days, all told. I think that's what I pay on annual renewal. So when I built a website, I did it on WordPress, which was extraordinarily painful. Very
we love to hate it, don't we?
I was shocked at how painful it was to put together.
Yeah.
But it was relatively free. It was like, I want to say you paid like an initial fee, but then there wasn't any maintenance or anything. And I ended up 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago now, actually, take it back, I moved to Wix. And it's 125 or 126 a year, but it's everything. And I can do everything myself. It's super easy. If I want help with something, I can reach out and they'll either charge me or they won't, depending upon what it is. And it's nice and clean, and their templates are super easy to use. So I was like, okay, so I rebuilt my website. My original website took me like 1.5 months to build on WordPress.
Yeah.
Wix took me not quite a weekend, because I had to figure out how to get everything off of WordPress to then put it back together in Wix. I use my website as a number of different things. It is my resume. It is these are my clients. This is what I do. So about me, I've got my portfolio, some of my portfolio out there, not all of it. And I have everything pretty much scrubbed down the way that I like. And I've got, hey, things that I find interesting. It's got its own page. Like, these are things you might like too. And these are the resources that I tend to use. And because I'm a Florida notary, I have my notary information on one of the tabs. So I use it as like a Swiss Army knife. Most people usually have 1 to 3 tabs that I've seen. And their portfolio is usually a link to something. Like, I've seen Dropbox accounts, I've seen Google folders, I've seen links to portfolio sites, hosted sites. It's what you decide you want, but look at your options. So.
Well, and I see Edel's got a logo. I've been looking at that pretty much the whole hour. I love your logo.
Thank you. Yes, I decided it.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
once I was in business for 10 years, I made a commitment to myself that if I make it 10 years without, jumping back into a corporate role full time, I would get myself a logo. And I made it 10 years. So I got myself a logo, and this is what it looks like. And I got it on Fiverr, and I paid $35 whole. Which, if you're not familiar with that website, it's really cool. You put it out, you put what you want out there, and 3 or 4 designers will reach out to you, and you pick the one you like the best. And then they or you pick one out of the ones that you like out of all their samples, and you go with them, and they give you like a range of designs. And the person I happened to pick, I liked her stuff, and she nailed it, like right out of the gate. The first one she sent to me, I'm like, oh, I love it. That's what I want. And then she's like, well, I have all these others. I'm like, yeah, nice. This is what I want. And it was like $35, and I own the copyright. So neat website.
Like,
You can put your website in here so we can traffic,
Sure.
you'd have traffic in there and share it.
That's the Fiverr website.
Mine, I created in WordPress, but that's because I've done so many STC volunteering things that had me using WordPress that I actually kind of knew it. It was harder about the content than actually the WordPress part, but I do pay for it so that I don't have, it doesn't say wordpress.com/me. It's just
Oh.
me.
Yeah.
And I did pay someone to do my logo.
Yeah, I'm glad I
Not
did the
through
logo.
Fiverr.
I really am.
It's good.
well,
I think
and
I'm ready to change mine up again. But
yeah, at the time that we were all designing our, having our own WordPress sites, WordPress was the thing, right? It had the most users, that was the most stable. Everything else was sort of, well, just risky, right?
Yeah.
And then after a while, the rest of the sites caught up and
right.
they realized they could sell more sites if they made it easier to use. But WordPress is where we started, right? It gives us
Yeah.
it gives
And I
us
don't think that I
basis.
market that much through it. Like, to me, it's more like a legitimacy thing. Like, people see that I'm a real company, as opposed to, I don't think I get that many hits from Google. Like, I think it's more like people find me on LinkedIn and then they go there, or I give them a website and then they go there. I give them a card at a conference and then they go there. Like, I don't use it. I don't think I've, get that kind of traffic.
I have to admit, when I go to conferences, I go with like a big stack of business cards, and the goal is get rid of them all. Even if it's a trade 1-for-1, that's fine. But the goal is get rid of them all, because that means that you have gone out and spoken to that many people.
Yeah.
And in my case, that's kind of the point as a freelancer, because you need those connections. But it's interesting how it's getting harder and harder to give away the business cards. You're like, oh no, we'll just scan your badge. I'm like, and then you're going to call me and sell me stuff that I don't buy.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't actually want the paper anymore.
No, they really don't. They really don't.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see in a couple of weeks when I go to Summit how many. I still have a lot of business cards from pre-pandemic, and I haven't been to any conferences since then. So I've still got a stash.
I have found a lot of companies that have an interest in hiring me to do something as a freelancer, not a consultant. They are, to get set up, they're like, well, you need to give us a business card and you need to show us your articles of incorporation or whatever your state sets up. In my case, it's
Business license?
it's not a business license. It's I'm drawing a blank at the name all of a sudden. I just did it. It's basically you file as a corporation with your state. So division of corporations for whatever state, and you file annual report. You file it every year. And it's basically, that's your legitimate, I am an actual business registered with my state. And you use that to get your IRS EIN number, which then protects your social security number. And it also lets you go into the bank and get a bank account with your business name on it and insurance for that matter.
Yeah, I've had a couple of contracts where they wanted insurance.
Yeah.
So
the Hartford still, techinsurance.com still offers the best rates on almost everything. And most of it is through the Hartford.
Yeah, I think that's who it was. A couple of times I've needed it.
Yeah. So I do a review every year with the Hartford, which is so much fun.
All right, guys, we have come to the end of our hour. I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to leave the meeting room open. I think it's time for a big round of applause. Thank you, Edel, for arranging this and for getting us organized and kicked off. And then we had lots of time to talk about freelancing and why we want to do it and why we don't want to do it and what we what our dream freelancing is like and how much we want to get in an RV and just go somewhere gorgeous and work, right?
Yeah.
Bye, everybody. Great session. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.